I'll be back. Yeah, sure.
Yes. Now you've put me off. Right?
Sorry. No,
That was a really bad Arnie.
I know.
The T1000 Schwarzenegger Arnold. Yes.
That's brilliant.
Right, sorry.
It's going to be the trailer. Brett, I'm so happy we are catching up today. You're a citizen of the world. You're like a jet setter.
I like we've got these old school mics with a cable on them.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Note for later. Yeah. hint. Like it's pretty low tech here. Yeah.
No,
You've got the latest Fuji film. It's going to be 4K, 60p per second. So like.
Okay, wow. Wow. I should have worn makeup.
Thank you.
All the imperfections.
It's very sharp as well. It's very sharp.
Okay.
We're going to see
All right.
everything.
You're sharp, dude. Keep going. Okay.
Sorry. So thank you very much for your time. You're always very busy, so I don't know. I don't even have to introduce you anyway. You were today at Finovate, I believe, to record the latest edition. Or
we did a episode of Breaking Banks, sort of live recording.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
How did it go? Live, yes,
Well,
live
so
recorded.
It won't air because we have we do a live stream, and that's every Thursday. And then we go out on the AM band. So one of the AM stations we support does it live. Others will delay it. They do it the next day, like Friday and things like that. Others over the weekend, because we have a syndication. And then once it hits a download on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, etc., then some of that gets distributed through partners as well. So like American Banker, BankNext, Asian Banker, etc., RFI. These are some of the syndication partners. So, we got a pretty broad distribution, about 180 countries now. We've been going for 6 years, but we did a live. Well, we did a recording of the show from Finovate. It was the last panel of the day.
So there was Jim, JP, and yourself.
Yeah, and Greg,
and Greg, Mr. Palmer,
yeah.
Mr. Finovate for so many years.
Exactly.
Let's talk stats. So you say in 100 countries your podcast is listened to or
180
distributed.
countries.
180, sorry.
Some weeks it's 176, some weeks it's 183.
That's a bad week, actually. Okay.
Yeah.
How many unique listener? Or?
Over the year, about 6.5 million. So unique listeners. On any individual episode in a week, we'll get about 500,000 listeners. But then over time, with downloads, that sort of doubles after 6 weeks or so. So, it's a pretty broad distribution.
We're talking serious numbers there. Talking about numbers, books.
It's not PewDiePie numbers, but it's pretty good for fintech.
Or the other one.
These guys don't know who PewDiePie is, do they?
They do?
No.
They do, no?
Felix Alf Kjellberg from Sweden.
I thought you were doing like the Arnold Schwarzenegger accent again. I was confused for a second.
No, Felix
I know.
PewDiePie, you know.
Yeah, I do. Like how many millions again now? It's like
I know that he's got more viewers on an average episode than the entire cable news industry in the United States.
Scary, in a way.
Yeah, like it's not even close. Anyway,
talking about stats, so books, because you're famous now. You've been a famous writer for quite a while. I'm going to say it still, but I remember that day, Queensway, I think Bella Pasta in 2009.
that was before the book.
That was before the book. That was a few months.
The book launch. I was getting your advice on a social media strategy for the book launch.
You were?
Yes.
Brett King asked for my advice at the time.
Always, yes.
So, and I remember that, and then everything changed again a few months after.
Yeah, it got crazy.
Bank 2.0.
We didn't remember, if you recall, I was getting ready for the launch, but I didn't know if it was going to go off.
You don't know what to expect.
In fact, the publisher, just to sort of give you an idea, when I signed the contract for the first book, Bank 2.0, the publisher said, we don't know if the banks are ready for this. So I pitched it to Wiley, and Wiley passed. They said, no, it's too much, right? But Marshall Cavendish accepted it. And they said, listen, we're going to do a limited print run, 2,000 copies. If we sell 1,000, we're broke even, we're happy, right? So that was their expectation.
How many? Tell us.
And so we did our first reprint 4 weeks after the book launch. So obviously went successful. And then now when I launched Augmented and Bank 4.0, the first print run is 50,000 copies. So it's a very different world today.
Incredible numbers. Are you still? I mean, you're already probably writing, starting to write on your next book, or not yet?
Yeah, I'm working on.
Always writing.
I'm working on a sequel to Augmented.
Okay.
It's called The Rise of Techno-Socialism.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so it's really interesting. We can get into that if you want. The other thing, I'm writing a sci-fi series.
You mentioned that earlier. So
Yeah, well,
you've already
I
wrote
a
one long
sci-fi
time ago,
novel.
you said.
You know, when I was like 25, I wrote a sci-fi novel.
Not unpublished.
No, it was
so
unpublished.
Far.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but I'm writing a sci-fi series designed sort of for Netflix or something like that. So we'll see.
For TV, like
yeah,
proper.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
on your own, or you've got partners?
Yeah,
I've
got someone collaborating with me.
Oh wow!
So.
Look at that, branching out from fintech and dominating the media world
See,
as well.
like with fintech, I write as a futurist, so I'm a frustrated science fiction author, probably.
Well, it's kind of.
Yeah.
But you've got a huge background as well in advertising or in the digital agency.
Digital marketing.
So,
I
of course,
ran a digital agency in Hong Kong.
Yes.
As part of Publicis now, but it was called Modem Media back then, so you could tell how early it was into digital advertising. They were still talking about modems. And then, I was head of e-business for Deloitte in Asia during the .com boom. So that was a pretty cool gig. They used to call me the e-guy in Hong Kong, because
e-guy.
So I've been in the digital transformation business for many years.
So can you give us a few tips? I mean, first of all, what do you like the most? I don't know if it's a tricky question, because you do a lot of public speaking, a lot of probably advisory work at senior level all over the world. You've got your company. I mean, you still have Moven,
exactly.
of course, which probably goes from strength to strength. You write. First of all, do you sleep? How many hours do you sleep on a typical day, if at all?
No, I guess, look, on average, it's probably 6
Oh,
hours,
6?
but,
You managed to squeeze 6 hours. That's
it
incredible.
depends. Like this week it's been average probably a 4.5, 5. But
well, exactly. But what do you? I mean,
what do I love to do?
Is there anything? Yeah, exactly. You like the most? I know it's hard, but is it writing? Is it?
Well, I think you could probably say it's the storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
But the storytelling comes through. It's hard work. It's the research. It's finding the right story. It's that aha moment,
Yes.
If I can find that aha moment and then find the way to tell that story, whether it's in the written form or on stage, when I see other people have the aha moment as well, that's when I'm like, I feel empowered by that. It's really powerful to see the light go on in someone's eyes when you're describing a story, and like, holy crap, yeah, wow, yeah. That's great. I love doing that.
So you feel like you have that then for that potential Netflix series. I mean, you've got like a strong. Yes, okay.
But this all started with like Moven as an enterprise, and even Breaking Banks, the radio show, didn't start with a plan in the typical sense, like I want to change the world and build this business, and yet it did. So I was on the book tour for Bank 2.0 and I was doing book signing in LA. And as the book tour got on, I started to get more adventurous in terms of sort of talking about it, more comfortable. So I started talking about the future of the bank account, how you download it to your phone, you tap your phone to pay, and you wouldn't go to a branch and sign a piece of paper. And I started describing this. And in the audience was this guy, William Quigley. And I've told this story a few times, so forgive me if you've heard it already. And William's a venture capitalist, Clearstone Ventures out of on the West Coast. And he said, as I was describing this, he's like, but banks aren't going to do this. He said, so who's going to do it? And so that was the epiphany. And I said, I will. Right? And so I literally went away from that book signing and spent the next sort of 2-3 hours searching online for a domain that really said to me about mobility and the way the bank account would change. And I looked for mobilebank.com and all that sort of stuff and came up with Move and Bank. Oh, wow. So that was the original derivation of the name, Move and Bank, right? And then in the end we dropped bank because it was simpler and it was cooler. And then for breaking banks, but part of it was also, people would say, oh, it's all very easy to write about this, but this stuff's really hard to do. And I was like, no, it's not. I'll show you, So there was a little bit of that motivation around it,
So Moven in 2019?
We'll be break even this year, so I think that's a big milestone.
Congratulations.
we'll be at a run rate of about 20 million in revenue, I think, by the end of the year. So we're making really good headway. We're rolling out right now to 70 million users across the planet.
70 million?
70.
In how many countries?
7 geographies right now.
Oh, wow.
So a lot of people know us with TD. So there's about 2.5 million customers on the TD platform. That's more than half of their mobile base. So we have a separate app right now, companion app strategy. And so it's called TD MySpend. And if you listen to the CEO of TD, he says one of the most successful products they've ever launched, so it's gone very well. Then we have Westpac in New Zealand, we have Bank Central Asia, BCA in Indonesia, we have Yandex Money, we have Celcom in Tanzania. I mean, we've got a bunch of different organizations around the world using this. But just Yandex is sort of like the PayPal of Russia. Mm-hmm. So they've got about 30 million mobile users, so they're rolling that out right now. And BCA has 40 million mobile users, so I mean, we're talking about a really solid user base there. In the US, we're looking at relaunching the consumer bank. We've been trying to acquire a banking license the last couple of years.
You're going to go back B2C?
And, yeah, we want to blow it up and make B2C really strong in the US and sort of raise some additional funding for that, because the hybrid business doing the direct-to-consumer and the enterprise has been good to date, but in the future those two businesses will sort of have to be self-sufficient and two separate divisions. So that's the next step.
And you saw in Europe a few cases like Fido. I mean, I don't want to mention too many other banks, but it's been pretty tough as well in terms of positioning and B2C model.
The biggest problem is if you have this hybrid where you do the consumer and B2B or enterprise. One of the problems we face is, everyone knows the consumer business, and so they think if we partner with them in Europe, for example, we're going to learn about their business, then come and launch our own bank. But we have never done that, right? So outside of the US, we're strictly a licensing model. Of course. But that's part of the fear. But the real problem is if you go to VCs or investors, when we went out to market for our last raise before the Series C, and we're pitching it, half the VCs were like, "Oh, we really love your consumer business, but we're not really interested in the software business." And the other half would be, "We love this enterprise model you've got, but we're not really interested in the consumer business." So it's, as a hybrid model, while operationally it makes sense because you get synergies for product development and so forth, from an exit perspective, it's very difficult. If a bank wants to buy Moven as a direct-to-consumer, they don't want to buy the software company. If Temenos or Fiserv or FIS says, "Hey, we really like Moven's enterprise business, but we don't want the bank," so that's really essentially why we have to separate. I'm giving you all the trade secrets here now.
I know. I mean, it's amazing. Yeah. Thank you very much, Brett. I've got 5 words for you. One is Fintech 2020. What do you think?
Is that 5 words?
No, sorry. I'll have 5 in a row. Sorry.
Okay.
5 different ones.
I've got to just spit
apologies.
out
That's French. I'm very slow.
Okay.
You can do that, or you can say take 10 seconds or whatever.
Fintech 2020. It's all about experiences, not products.
Okay. That makes sense. Bank, well, I don't even have to ask, but I'm going to ask. Bank branches. I'm asking you.
So, failing economics.
Collaboration.
Building new capabilities.
Facebook. Rich in data,
poor in reputation.
That's a good one. It's the best I had so far, and I had a few. The last one, for the words, please tell me what you think when I give you something and you take it in your hand. It won't sting or bite or nothing.
It's cool. Someone 3D printed the save icon. Sorry, I borrowed that from someone else, but
I know, but that's a good one. So I wouldn't blame you.
I of course remember when we had 5-inch floppy disks.
I remember, yeah, 5 and a quarter, like the
and the reason, because this is not floppy, this is hard, right?
It's hard, yeah.
But they were still called it a floppy disk. But of course, what this signifies to me is the change in the way computers have become more usable from an interface perspective. So when I learned to code computers back in high school, I learned to code on a Monex computer where I actually programmed on graphite with a graphite pencil marking on cards.
You didn't.
I stacked up the cards and chunk, 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 chunk. It was an interpretive compiler. Then, while I was at school, the microcomputers started coming out. BBC microcomputer, the Spectrum, Z80, and of course my favorite, which I got, was a Vic-20 microcomputer.
Yes.
In fact, I used to run a paper round, and what happened was I had a bike that I bought for the paper round. I quit the paper and I sold my BMX bike and I bought a Vic-20.
You did. Okay.
And my first commercial programming job was a game I wrote for the Vic-20 called Cavernous.
You wrote it?
Yeah, in 1983, 84.
Do you still have it somewhere on the...
I wish. I actually thought about putting it on iPhone, actually, as an app. But
do you have the IP? Or
no. I have the concept. I could recreate it. So that was how I started. But in those days, you took a high degree of competency just to operate a computer. And this is sort of a symbol of that it was quite clunky. Of course, these days, a 2-year-old can pick up an iPad and use it. But more importantly, the next round of computers, voice-activated AIs and things like that, you just talk to them like a person and they'll respond. And then in the future, of course, spatial computing with wearables such as augmented reality smart glasses. What is a trend towards simplifying how computers work with us.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, so there you go.
Thank you very much. Yes, very good answer. The last thing is, can you tell us a few more words about the Fintech Power 50?
So, I started collaborating with you guys, as the new mag came out and the Power List and things like that, and fortunately I was able to put something excerpt from Bank 4.0. But the thing is that where we are at FinTech today, particularly in terms of raising awareness of FinTech, would not be possible without influencers. Now, there's a lot of debate that goes on about these lists and whether people on these lists are real influencers or not and things like that. But I have to say that the reason we're having that conversation is because those people have made a difference. So I'm honoured to be amongst the 50 that you chose, but I know it's going to take hard work to stay there, and it requires continued relevance and continued innovation and a whole lot of hard work, and that doesn't scare me.
And it shouldn't, because I think among all those influencers, you're probably, again, the one with the biggest, longest longevity. So thank you so much, Brad.
Thank you, Christophe.
You've been like a friend for so long.
We have. It's many, many years. It's over 10 years now, right?
But we still don't see each other very often. But when we see, hopefully we make it count.
Look, it's hard. I even come to this meetup tonight we had here at Rise, and there's people that are meeting. But, And like Vincent, a good friend of mine, helped me. I actually crashed on his couch when I did Bank 2.0 launch.
You did?
I did a book signing in London the first time because I was very poor back in those days. I haven't seen him for 2 years. But I'm like, I've done 33 countries last year. And so I realized that at some point I've got to just slow down and enjoy this. And so maybe that's my goal for 2020, I think.
Take some time off, Brett?
Maybe,
seriously?
Yeah. I just bought a place in Thailand on the river in Bangkok.
Oh.
So maybe I'll go and spend 3-4 months there next year and just write my sci-fi series.
Exactly, you could, yeah. Oh, man. I'm going to be in Thailand next month. But anyway, that's for another year. Brett, again, thank you so much.
Thanks, pal.
It's always a pleasure. Take care.
Peace.
À bientôt. Salut.